everybody treats mirror work a little bit differently. Some people just see it as a self-love method. The mirror is kind of like a tool on developing on the idea of confidence and learning to love yourself, whereas others see it as more of like a spiritual journey, something that they take part in to understand themselves on a deeper or even like a higher level, like gaining insight and downloading information from a source that they could have potentially not been hearing as clearly if they hadn't taken part in mirror work. Let me know your own definition of it and let me know your own practices down there in the comments and we can discuss this together. If you're new to this channel, don't forget to subscribe. I make videos around these kind of topics regularly. I share my own kind of spiritual path, spiritual journey, and having fun with divination tools and all those kind of things. But the reason why I think it's important to talk about mirror work in particular is because I feel like everything does start from you, starts from within, because all of the things that you discover in mirror work is so much exposure around the idea of yourself, who you are, what that means, what you need, your intuition and gut. If you're someone who struggles with connecting to what your intuition is trying to say to you, your gut feelings, like you might second think a lot, you can literally face those areas that you might often shy from or second or question. And I think that staring at your own reflection puts a light on that, so you can't look away and you can't avoid the truth and the reality of things, because I think it's quite vulnerable from time to time to look at what you're facing, and it's hard to find answers to big life questions that you might have, such as what is my purpose, what am I doing here, you know, what's the whole point, when you're not actually looking at the exact subject that you're supposed to be questioning. In the same way, it would be very hard for a therapist to work with a client, try and give them the answers and the advice that they need without actually sitting down with them face to face and seeing their situation for what it is. It's realizing ultimately that there is someone else in the room. So when we are hanging out with our friends, I will see 4 others in the room. 4 of my friends. I am hosting for them, assisting to their needs, like considering them, but often we don't really consider the fact that we are another body, another human being, another need to assist to. We often like put that to the side. Like, let's say if I am hosting on a day that I don't feel very up to scratch, I don't feel in the mood to, mentally I might feel a little bit drained, financially I might be able to not afford to host, all these different aspects, you throw it to the side because you're like, this is what matters right now, what's in front of me. You are another being in the room every time, every day of your life. Who have you always had yourself from day dot, other than your mother giving you like nutrients and the things that you needed to bring you into this world, and when you were plonked into it, all you had was yourself to put up with all the stuff you put it through, the good, the bad, the ugly. It carried you through wounds, through hurt, through good times, through celebration, through dancing, through crying, mental states that you went in from time to time, putting up with toxic people that you knew. You had friends that came and went. Family came about when you needed them, perhaps. They can't always be there, but who could always be there is you. When you learn to look into your reflection a little bit more and sitting with it for the purpose of just sitting with it, and I'll go into how we can do that in a minute, it kind of makes you see yourself not so much as just, oh, that's my reflection, it's just like bouncing back what I'm doing. It makes you start seeing this person here as you do a friend, as you do a family member, or even a stranger on the street. And this isn't about self-love necessarily. This isn't about what a lot of people, I feel like, talk about mirror work as being, which is affirmations and like loving every inch of your skin and body for everything it is. This isn't really about me saying catch a reflection and go, damn girl, which don't get me wrong, sometimes there will be days where you do feel like that and you're like feeling yourself, you're like, yeah, like, but let's face it, it's not always going to be like that. The days aren't always going to look that great and you're not always going to look that great, but being there for yourself regardless of the days that aren't too great, the days that stink, the days that went crap. You come home from work, you're stressed as hell, your ears are ringing, your hair's out here, you're drenched through because you've just been walking through in the rain and it was just one naff thing after the other. You were tested, you were tried, and you're just done, you're just sick of it. But you can walk up to that mirror and you can say, what a day. How we managed to pull through that, I have no idea. And sometimes you've just got to laugh. Like in the same way that if your sister or your best friends or whatever has a bad, tough day, you're not all of a sudden going to be like, I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to hear it. Like, you've had a bad day. I only want to talk to you when you're looking great, when you're showing up for yourself in every way that you can and you're in your best space. I only want to talk to you then. Like, imagine if we treated our friends in the way that we treat ourselves, in that we don't look in the mirror unless we're feeling sexy, glamorous, confident, happy, or just checking up on if we look okay for the outside world. Like, imagine if the only time we saw our friends was when we just wanted to check in on if they looked perfect before they went out into the world. But in any other case, like, I don't want to see you after the interview unless the interview goes well. No, that's not how it should work with our friends. That's also not how it should work with ourselves. It's the, if you can't handle me at my worst, you don't deserve me at my best. I think we should have that same attitude about ourselves. And that is what mirror work brings for me. That is a long ass introduction. It's kind of changing the way that you use and relate to mirrors. Generally, if I was to ask you all watching this video, what do you use a mirror for, or what do you associate a mirror to, a lot of people would probably say things like, well, doing my hair, fixing my makeup, brushing my teeth. It's like something that we can rely on just to check that we look good and ready for the outside world. But I'm now even catching my reflection accidentally in like a car window or in a shop window, and I'm like, whoa, there she is. So in the same way that you might cross paths with a friend you haven't seen for a while in the street, and this is gonna sound crazy, but bear with me, you can do that with your own reflection. Walk past a car mirror accidentally, or walk past a shiny surface, and you're like, hi, like, how you doing? We really do spend an awful lot of time facing and serving other people around us, particularly if we are a parent. We might care for our parents, we might care for animals even, or if we're in a job where we've got to face customers all the time and we're making sure they're okay. Are you okay? What do you need? Like, it's not easy to suddenly check up on ourselves when we haven't been used to doing that for so long. It just starts with simply looking on a regular basis for no reason other than to acknowledge ourselves. I didn't realize how often some people can't even face themselves. Like, for a lot of people, physically that's very difficult to do because they're not happy with their body, their physical form. But I think the best advice I can give for people who are even further back than maybe where I'm talking at now is to remember that it's not even about the stuff going on in your like artificial, like bodily, I call it like a body coat, like a bodysuit, your human bodysuit. It's not about the body that's carrying your name. It's about the kind of what you would say is like a window into that soul. They say the eyes are the window to your soul. It's having more of like a focus, a pinpoint on the eye. I would say it's quite rare to hear someone say like, I can't even look in the mirror because of my eyeballs. So not only does that make that easier for people to approach, but also the fact that our eyes never really like change. However, you know, our hair, our skin, our teeth is like forever changing, and that might make it hard to sometimes connect to our true identity, like who we are when we're shifting and constantly changing. Like, how often do you look in the mirror and kind of find a new wrinkle? As you become a mature adult, things start shifting again, so it might be really hard to like connect with yourself when it's changing, but your eyes, they don't. And also, the thing is with the eyes is that we kind of see our child self in our faces when we focus in on our eyes, because those eyes have always looked back at us from being a kid. Have you ever looked at a picture of like your great aunt or grandma, and you look at her eyes and you're like, whoa, they look like mine, or oh my god, like my great grandma really looks like my mum there? And it's usually in the eyes. Or if you haven't seen a friend for years, since school or whatever, and you bump into each other and they might have changed all the way around in these different areas, but then you look at their eyes and you're like, whoa, I recognize you from your eyes, they just haven't changed. That connects us back into our like heritage and going back to our roots, and connecting with your child self is what mirror work is really, really good for. Regardless of if you've had a really smooth sailing childhood or not, like for some people there's going to be a lot more barriers and obstacles to get through, and things that were pushed down over time, and parts of yourself that were chipped away at or knocked down on. Or even if you would consider yourself privileged and lucky in that you didn't go through an awful lot of stuff that you could call difficult, but everybody has been exposed to the realities of life. Adult living and life in general isn't easy, it's tough, and there are things that would have come into play over time which gets in the way of yourself and your mission, your goal. I think if you just think about how harsh you kind of know life is and the world can be, imagine a child stepping out into that and being exposed to that all at once. And that's probably why a lot of like new parents get that kind of fear of bringing this child up into a world that they know will be difficult and hard for them, and it's scary and it's overwhelming to suddenly think that you can't have complete control over that. Eventually, over time, they're going to have to, you know, step on their own 2 feet. You have to realize that you were also exposed to that, and you had your own difficulties and other external outside influences coming in and warping maybe perceptions, your true opinions. Parents, teachers, friends, those with the best and greatest intentions would have played a little part into your exposure of what's right, what's wrong, and getting back into that position that you were in before all of those exposures. Child work, it's mirror work, it's reconnection. They say that before you reach the age of 7 is when you are your kind of truest self, or at least like most authentic and maybe understanding of your purpose. You naturally gravitated then towards the things that you feel inspired by and bring you energy. I think passions and hobbies basically translates to the word energy, because it's where you find your most like enthusiasm, and it's what makes your body like tick, and you just want to do more of it, and time flies by when you're doing it. And that's what passions and interests are to me. And as a kid, that comes so naturally to you, doesn't it? You just walk into a room. Do you remember, did anyone used to have I used to have this thing called golden time, and it's basically this amazing period teachers sometimes gave us, like it was an hour at the end of the day or something, and it basically meant you could do whatever you wanted. The room would be set out where it's like there's different activities in different corners, and you could just let the kids do what you wanted, and everyone was so excited if golden time was happening that day. That's kind of what I feel like a 7-year-old is like, and how they approach life in general. It's like being plonked in the middle of all of this stuff that they're experiencing, and they can just naturally gravitate towards whatever makes them tick, whatever makes their soul set on fire. But then over time, programs, rules, systems, structures, discipline comes into place, and it chips away at the kind of freedom and the exploration and the open-mindedness that kids have and the curiosity that kids have. You know, you can't do this, you can do that, but not too much because it's not as like secure as this option. Oh, you want to do that as a job? Well, remember, this happens to people who do that. Oh, well, successful people are more over on this sort of side of the industry. So you don't want to maybe work in like creative fields, and you get more and more boxed and boxed and boxed to the point where you reach my age, for instance, 27 years old almost. And I'm like, how much of myself is me talking? And how much of that is my parents, my teachers, the books I've read, the programs, the documentaries I've watched, people just like throwing their opinions in my face. So that is what mirrors can do. They are very powerful tools that I think people sleep on, honestly. Even with manifestations and trying to create intentions into your life and being more intentional in general about where you're going, where you're headed, your actions, and just being mindful, it allows you to stop, reflect, think, ask yourself big questions and get answers. I think typically when you're stuck in a conundrum, you're on the fence about something, you're undecided about career goals and opportunities, honestly, the easiest thing you can do, which I think people don't do, is just to sit in front of a mirror and ask yourself the questions that you're constantly asking your mum or your best friends about. Like, I don't know if I should do this. I don't know whether I want to do that. I don't know if I should leave my job. I don't know if I should be with this person. Your question starts with I, but you're looking at your boyfriend. You're looking at your best friend. You're looking at your parent. They're not going to know the answer to that question. Do you know who is? This little cutie in the mirror. I made a video recently on how you can set really like powerful, strong intentions and manifest quicker. I'll leave a link to that up here somewhere. You know how it is. Writing down intentions for the rest of your year or whatever. You can do that in front of a mirror. You want to be doing that in your own company, and facing that person who's looking back at you will remind you of, as I mentioned, your past, your history, the things that you used to care about. I think the strongest manifestation you can do is unlocking what was important to you at 7 years old-ish, because that's where your kind of heart source is. That's the stuff that gives you energy. So what was important to you then? What spaces do you find the most joy and happiness in this like little short space of time that we have on earth? Like, where do we want to be putting our time and attention into? But then also it's that idea of like, the reality is we have been living an adult life for a long time, so we are older than 7 years old, so there are going to be parts of ourselves that we're looking at and being like, when I see myself in my reflection, I see that I am, you know, a mother, a mum. I see that I am a married woman. You might look at your clothes and be like, I love fashion. I want to be able to have more money and finance flowing into my life so I can like spend more money on beautiful dresses or spend more money on my children or my family. I look haggard. I know that I need to manifest more money to have a holiday. Or just, it allows you to understand your like wants and needs a little bit better when you're facing yourself, I think. The eyes are kind of like the core of all of the stuff that gets added to it. So obviously me, myself personally, like I'm changing my hair and putting colours on it. I'm wearing clothes that I identify with at this current point in time, but like my truest self is in the eyes. And I mean, if you don't have any struggles at all or insecurities around this practice, I would even advise being completely nude more often in front of the mirror. I've never done that personally myself, but it's stripping away from as much of the other things that you kind of unnecessarily add on to your body, your human form that isn't really important in this practice. Even having no makeup on, looking at yourself in the mirror with less makeup in general would be really helpful in a reconnection like that, because you're going to look more like yourself as a child. It's vulnerable. I think it is quite difficult for some people, and it's not going to be smooth sailing, and I think over time you do get used to it. But then at the same time, it shouldn't be taken seriously, like as seriously as I see a lot of people take mirror work, in terms of the affirmations they talk about and how it's about loving every inch of your skin and telling your reflection that you love it, I love you, and all of these things, which I think is nice, but I think you've got to get there. You've got to reach that point first, and don't be afraid to just chat away your reflection a little bit more and smirk at it. I think for me, something really powerful has been just the idea of sometimes looking at myself in the reflection after a period of time that I've had that's been really fun, or even really difficult, or a goal that I achieved, and just being like, you did that. No, you did that. Do you know what it kind of reminds me of? It's the sort of thing I can imagine Jim Carrey doing in a movie, where he's just like having fun with his reflection and talking to it and being like,
Ooh, somebody stop me!
He's back to his old self.
Oh my God.
That one's for free.
Keep up with him because he's gonna move fast.
that's what I feel like you should do with yourself a little bit more. And I think a really easy way to naturally infuse that into your life a little bit more is a technique that Mel Robbins, who's a therapist online, I love her work. It's simply glancing at yourself in the mirror at least once a day. At the end of the day would probably be best. But for me, I just did it whenever I kind of saw myself in the mirror, because why not? And all it is giving yourself a high five. It's not an affirmation of I love you, you're the best, you're doing amazing, because sometimes we don't feel like that. And I don't think there's any use and good that will come out of an affirmation that you don't believe in at the time. But what you will believe in is you showing up for yourself and congratulating yourself regardless of how the day looked, because it is something that we universally know as a signal of like congratulation, of like you've got this, of amazing work, keep going, continue, keep it up. You know, you don't have to speak any certain language to know that is a signal of that. And we're so used to giving that to other people, making sure that other people feel acknowledged and recognized, to the point that it's kind of buried enough into our brain. That is what it means. So that's why there's scientific study behind the idea of doing that for yourself and seeing your own reflection doing that back to you. Trigger something in your brain, in your head, to say this person in front of me is cheering me on. Having your own company regardless of the good and the bad. Because I think for me, what became really profound in doing that every day is that sometimes I could laugh, sometimes I would be brushing my teeth, looking at myself in the mirror and being like, oh, I haven't given myself a high five today. I think back to the day and I'm like, God, I did that thing that I wasn't very proud of. This was very testing and I might have blown up in a way that wasn't the greatest. It kind of calls you out a little bit. It calls me out for the things that I'm not necessarily proud of. But hey, that made me reflect. But I can face that in the mirror and be like, I did my best given the tools, the ability, the knowledge I had at the time. I just did what I could. I continue to have your back, and it was a day, but let's move on. Tomorrow is a new one. We got this. Give yourself that goal of doing that once a day. And you don't have to say anything. You don't have to think anything. Some people find it really difficult and they're like shy and they're like, I feel stupid. That's fine. Just do it. Just look and go, what happened to me after doing that? And it felt a little bit creepy. It kind of reminded me of, in horror movies, and I don't want to make this sound scary and not positive, but in horror movies when there's a scene where the reflection like moves a little bit differently to the person whose reflection it is, and it makes them aware that that's not them. That's sort of like how I started seeing myself in the mirror, but solely because it was like, oh, there's that girl that I high five every day. The idea of just smiling back and being like, how are you, kind of thing. You start getting a bit more confident at the idea of just looking at yourself and doing that motion, to the point where sometimes it might come with a word, or sometimes it might come with a little bit of like a sentence or two. Give that a try and then maybe come back to this video. think ultimately where this process leads you to is very similar to meditation. If you're not really someone for meditation, if you get very antsy or like fidgety and stuff, something that might be a bit better for you is, because meditation is just about, sitting still so you can gain information that is inside yourself about like where you need to be in life, or like a lot of people meditate to find answers from like divine or their intuition or their gut, and they just need to sit still and hear themselves like think. You can do that same thing from a mirror, because every answer that you're going to need for a lot of stuff that is to do with your like intuition and gut and guidance is going to be standing right in front of you. Like I said, hello. Allowing some time in your schedule, as you would a friend that you're going to go see, go see yourself, go make some time for yourself and just sit with her. You'll start to listen, to hear the stuff that was really already going on and chatting away in your head, but because you had your eyes focused on other individuals, you were hearing what their body language, what their needs, what their eyes were saying. It can sometimes be quite like emotional for some people. I think particularly if you haven't listened to yourself for a while, it can be quite vulnerable to suddenly face that, and sometimes even face the consequences of that, because it can be maybe a little bit shameful for some people to realize that they haven't done it for a long time, and that there is someone watching back at their face and saying, where have you been? Like, why haven't we worked on this thing that we wanted to do since we were a kid? All of those exposures come through. It's kind of a little bit invasive maybe for some people to suddenly be faced with that child, that person, that soul, that individual that got brushed under the rug or got forgotten about. It's okay to start letting that soul, that human being back in. And for some people, that's just all in the mind. You can sit in silence every so often and think about what those eyes are making you feel, and remembering stuff about yourself that perhaps you've let go of, or not connected with enough, practiced enough, or experimented with. Or you can have full-blown conversations. Like I said, you can be like, do you remember when we used to do this? Do you remember how fun that used to be? I always wanted to be a so-and-so. Like, I always wanted to find a lifestyle that looked like this, or connect with a community that felt like that. Like, I feel and I look tired. Some people might just realize that the reflection is just showing them the neglect of how they haven't tended to their needs for so long, and they're like, this poor individual. And because you're seeing yourself as like a separate entity to yourself, you're suddenly like, this poor soul, she needs a break, she needs a rest, she needs something. Or maybe there's a bit of like loneliness that you sense from your eyes and your presence. It's like, I need to go find myself someone that can bring me love, can bring me companionship, and go on adventures with me, because I don't do that enough. And there's a whole world of stuff that you might be facing now that you're facing yourself. Ultimately, all those questions that you might have been avoiding. And, the next minute you're like, girl, like, life isn't easy, is it? Like, God, adulthood is tough. Actually, like, parenthood is really difficult. I don't know how I've managed to cope as much as I have, but I have, and I'm not thanking you for that. You might have suffered, like, physical injuries sometime in your lifetime, and your body's just done what it needs to do and fixed you up, and you've gone on your merry way and kind of forgotten about the incredible recovery that you've made. And you might be facing that when you're in the mirror, because you're like, you got me through that, and I didn't see how like crazy powerful and insane my body is, like, for doing that. Or it's looking into the eyes and remembering some of the letdown, betrayal that someone gave you, or in school, like, you were picked on or picked apart, and you can see that there's still confidence issues, parts of yourself that hold on to that and cling on to that, and you know that needs to be worked on a bit more. You need to face some opportunities that can help you bring your confidence up a little bit more. Like, you need to chip away outside of your comfort zone. You know how we often say to others around us, like, oh, you're worth more than you believe, you should reach harder and try harder because you deserve it. But when it comes to ourselves, we're like, nah, I can't. But we don't really know why we say that. But then mirror work can make us realize, oh, you know, I was picked on for doing that or thinking that. Or 3 years ago when I went for an interview in a workspace I really wanted or really felt I was going to do well in, and I didn't. And now I'll never do it again. And it can be a lot. Because I don't think like achieving the highest of highs of just being very like recklessly in love with yourself, and I don't think that's sustainable. I do believe in a certain degree to like fake it till you make it, but then you don't want to crumble and give up on the idea of faking it till you make it when one day approaches that you don't feel at all, you know, even like pretending. When you do get to that space where you're like, actually, I really don't like the person looking back and I feel pissed off at her, if you can at least force out a high five and just be like, we did what we could. But that's a whole lot better than completely shutting yourself out and down. All of the artificial stuff that we think about when we're looking in the mirror, like how we look and like if we're okay for the outside world and like doing our teeth and things that we've been told that have been put onto us as an adult. But as a child, what baby have you ever seen that looks into a mirror and like starts saying, why does my nose look like that? Or start thinking like about insecurities. Those are things that we learn and we picked up on from our parents or from magazines or from TV or the internet, social media and Instagram. And babies, they're just purely like fascinated. And that's where we want to get back to, reconnecting to that idea of like, oh my God, that's my reflection. This is me. And like having fun with it and just being goofy. That's what kids do. They pull faces and they just like, babies in particular are so fascinated by their reflection, by their mirror. And then over time, I don't know what happens, but we get older and older and get less and less interested with looking and facing ourselves. We're more, I guess, distracted by everything else going on and other people and what they're doing and how they look. And I think my next kind of task after the high five one would be to just find preferably the biggest mirror. This is the biggest mirror I could find in the house. Or it could just be a bathroom mirror. It could be a little compact mirror. It doesn't need to be anything crazy. Sit in front of it and have a chat or just have a sit or a think. And anything that kind of pops in your head is stuff that you should be aware of about yourself and what you're doing, and you know, whether you're doing the right thing right now, whether you're putting the right energy into the right places, how you're feeling, how you're doing. There's probably a lot of those kind of questions that you can set aside ready to ask yourself when you're sitting in front of the mirror. Like, where are we trying to reach? Are we profiting in joy when we're taking part in these activities, when we're at work or when we're with our friends? Like things that we kind of already knew intuitively, they're sitting in the back of our subconscious, like, oh, people around us are toxic and it's not allowing me to live the life I want or achieve. And it makes us face that and be like, I know what I now need to do, like things that I need to stop, ties I need to cut before I can move forward. And then you will eventually you're going to want to look at yourself and be like, do you know what, actually you're all right, you're fine, you're doing good. Like considering, or even if it's not considering, finding gratitude in the fact that things have looked really well, like things have gone really amazing recently. We sometimes don't even sit in that space long enough because we're ready for the next like bad thing to happen because things are going so well, or we're doing well and then it makes us just want to like find more amazing things and opportunities. But sometimes we just need to sit in the moment and be like, doesn't this moment feel great? I'm really happy here. Recognizing the times where you feel happy and you've achieved a lot and accomplished a lot, you can sort of see that in your reflection and your body language and being like, I clearly really like how I feel in this job or around this person or in this life situation. I'm learning something about myself in that I now know I need to bring more of that into my life, or I'm on the right life path here, or You know how like a friend tells you that they've, you know, found a new partner, they've been together for a couple of months and their face lights up, they're glowing, and you're like, I'm so happy for you because you just look like a completely different person. I can tell you're with the right person, you're doing the right thing. That's what you need to start recognizing in yourself. There is a little human being in there, waiting very patiently for you to finally stop tending to everybody else before you tend to them. And they've got little life goals and little expectations that they set for themselves and had for themselves when they were younger. But then somewhere down the line, there might have been a few that they achieved, but maybe not all. Or maybe they simply just helped you achieve all the things that you wanted, but then you were never there to say, well done. I mean, you might even find that a lot of the discoveries that you have in doing this as frustrating or like not really what you want to hear, because a lot of the time it can expose the fact that some of the things getting in the way of the things that you want and need is actually, it's you. Like a lot of the time we are our own blockages, whether that's like physical blockages in our body that we're not allowing us to be like healthy enough to achieve certain things, or it could be like mental blockages or even spiritual blockages. I mean, the first step is just identifying them, right? Acknowledging them, realizing that they are there, and then working on that, like chipping away at those blockages and bringing them back down. I guess allowing our intentions to meet the spaces that we need to be will 101% open up doors all around. It allowed me to reach the stuff that I always did want but didn't really know how I could do it, because I always felt kind of below everyone else or not as good as everyone else. But it's also made me realize that I am just another human being trying my best, so it doesn't matter if I don't make it perfect the first time round, because I was always scared of not being like the perfection that I needed to be. I'm a bit of a perfectionist, so I would hold myself back until I felt like I was ready. But looking at myself in the mirror and realizing I'm just a human being has made me realize that I won't ever be in that perfect position to be properly ready. It's just about showing up and saying, I'm here whether you like it or not. I'm ready as I ever will be in this given moment. And it's okay if it doesn't go exactly as I anticipated, because I'm still going to be there at the end of the day. I'm going to go back to my home and look at myself in the mirror and be like, ding. I am now more aware that I am worthy of the things that I want as much as other people are around me, because I'm seeing myself as another human being in the room more so now. You know, the last final component, the element that's really necessary to getting what you want is believing that you deserve it. Because once you've reached past that point, you're literally capable of anything. Because you would do anything for a child, for instance, that you want to do well. You would literally run it across any obstacle and push any mountain just to make them happy. So when you can stop seeing yourself as like a non-important factor in the room, you can achieve so much more because you believe in it a lot more. We, as everyone else is, are worthy of releasing ourselves from that shame, from that guilt, and accept ourselves. Mirror work forces you to face parts of yourself that you'd rather not. Big, scary dreams, blockages that we know we need to work through in order to achieve the things that we want to achieve, and also the fact that there's a human being which we've pushed down, far down into the priority list. Before it's too late, before we get to an age where we're like, I've realised how much I've kind of let myself down, or not let myself down, but not let myself rise, not let myself reach up. So yeah, as I said, find a big mirror to do this as like a regular activity, but then also do it in spontaneous reflections that you find, just as you would a friend, like, hey, how you doing? Have a little compact mirror on you more often to try and look into and like reconnect with yourself a little bit more. But also, if you want some answers, work with your gut and intuition by sitting in front of that big ass mirror in the same way that you work with your intuition in tarot, for instance. You're learning stuff you already kind of know, you're just kind of digging into that intuitive part of your brain that needs to be lifted a bit more. I would love to discuss this in the comments, so feel free to use the comments as like just a big old chat between ourselves. If you've got any like guidance for each other, tips that you've learned along the way, that would be amazing to kind of discuss that down there. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe to this channel to be notified every time I make a brand new video. If you'd like to book a tarot reading with me, we can do some one-to-one readings. Just email me. I've got all my social medias down there. I've got a tarot reading, Instagram and Facebook. Thank you so much for watching. I am on social media in general at Nincompoop. Sending loads of love from my house to yours. All the best with this mirror work and malarkey. Let me know how it goes for you. Sending loads of love from my house to yours. Bye everyone.